What would you do if you woke up tomorrow and you couldn't access any of your bank accounts, any of your credit accounts, any of your stocks, any of your bonds, or anything which was digital? What would you do? How long would you be able to last? Let's talk about that. All right, guys, so I want to talk about the last video I made, which was a breakdown of what would happen in the first 12 hours of a widespread cyber attack. Now, that video was informed by three sources. It was informed in part by a book I read called This Is How the World Ends. I believe the author's name is Nicole Peroth. I'll leave a link to that audiobook in the description below. I think it's very important that you guys understand what we're up against here, because as I said months ago, this is likely going to be the next sequence of catastrophic events. The other source that I leveraged for this was a over-the-phone interview that I did with a subscriber who volunteered their time. And at first I kind of thought, okay, is this person sussing me out just to hack me? Because they were talking about their hacking accolades, and they work for a major media conglomerate, a news agency that I'm pretty sure everybody knows, and they do internet security for these people. They basically inform me of a lot of different things with respect to the scope and potential hazards with respect to cyber warfare. Another source is this great podcast. I'm going to post a link in the comment section below, and it's only going to be about an hour and a half of your time, and I strongly recommend that you go and listen to that podcast because it is highly informative. It seemed like it was very clean, objective journalism. So in that video, I talk about an all-out cyber attack on NATO and its allies. Attacks on the critical infrastructure, be it water treatment systems, dams, power generation systems, communication, transportation, social media, telecommunications, the internet, and just pretty much anything in which there's a chip inside, that would be a target of cyber attack. Now, every single example that I provided in that video, that's just not hypothetical that I made up. All of those things have actually happened in some way, shape, or form around the world before. All of those things, whether they're cell phones that started on fire because hackers were manipulating the firmware, or hospital data records which were destroyed, dams which went offline, the Stuxnet virus that took out the Iranian nuclear facilities, the drone hacks that have happened, the water treatment facility hacks, the hacks on power grids like the one that Russia did to Ukraine. All of these things are very possible. But there's one thing to note, is that we don't know the full extent of every nation state's cyber weapons arsenal. It could be very, very vast. But the problem is, in order to execute it all at once, like I talked about in that video, it would take a significant amount of manpower. So let's just say if every rogue nation decided they were going to unleash all of their 0 days in cyber weapons and expose all of their vulnerabilities that they had in American software, Canadian software, NATO software, if they decided to do it all at once, if one of those systems fails, then it's going to have a cascading effect. Okay, let's say you take out the telecommunications of a country. Well, that country is not going to be able to coordinate an emergency response if other things start shutting down. So you can see how one feeds off another and makes another worse. If you take out 3 or 4 areas of critical infrastructure, the remaining 8 to 10 levels are going to be drastically diminished as well. So there's a domino effect to all of this. But in order for it to happen to the magnitude that it did in that video, it would take an army of hackers. I'm talking about thousands of hackers. I'm talking about the stockpiling of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of vulnerabilities. And likely, hacking is not only about putting malware on computers, it's also about phishing. And what phishing is just trying to get people's personal information, get somebody to open an email, basically find a way in to a system. Sometimes that even involves people going on the ground, dropping a USB stick on the ground. Somebody finds the USB stick and wants to return it. to somebody at their workplace or whatever. Like, let's say you're at work, you're walking down the hallway, you find a USB stick. What is this? You go and you plug it into a computer. Unknown to you, you have now uploaded some kind of malware simply by virtue of plugging it in. So it's not just a game of ones and zeros. You need to understand this is a game of espionage. It's a game of private investigation. When you have what they call a gapped system, meaning that there's a gap between that system and the internet, like there was with the Iranian nuclear facility, that was a closed circuit system, okay? There was no connection to the internet because the Iranians knew that they could be crippled by malware. So what they had to do then is they had to find a way to get that data onto that system, not by telekinesis or broadcasting some high radio frequency signal or anything like that. They actually had to get somebody to put a USB drive into a computer. So there's going to be that component as well. But remember, we live in a day and age where we have stuff being manufactured all over the world. And remember, there was a lot of concerns about certain equipment manufactured in certain countries which may have some kind of sleeper software on it or have the ability at some point to unleash some sort of attack or perhaps just stop the device from working altogether. So this is a very serious threat, guys. And even the internet itself could come down. Another way that it could be brought down is the domain name servers. So if you're going to a website, usually that domain name is issued by a certain company. Now, don't quote me on this. This is kind of getting out of my lane a little bit. I just know that through denial of service attacks, which is when you overwhelm a server's ability to basically do its job and allow people to access the information on it. When you overwhelm that server, it's called a denial of service attack, and that prevents people from accessing those websites. So you can effectively shut down the internet. Now imagine if the internet was shut down this day and age. It happened to me today, ironically, right after I had uploaded that video, and it happened for about 15 minutes where there was no internet. It was almost like, it was weird, okay? 15 minutes. But just imagine not having the internet for 2, 3, 4 weeks. I mean, that might be the greatest thing that ever happened to humanity when we come out of it. But still, it's something to consider that if we don't have the internet, we may well not have debit machines. The whole stock market, which is now set up on these internet-based trading apps, would be thrown into disarray. Okay, the entire economy as a whole is now in some way, shape, or form tied in to the internet. So what would you do, if all of your money that you have saved in those ones and zeros, or maybe you're somebody who's in the other side of the spectrum and like in the movie Fight Club, you're just praying for things to be brought back to tabula rasa, a blank slate, if you will, so that you don't have to pay anything, so that your credit card debts and all of your debts are wiped. So I guess it's perhaps a bit of a zero-sum game in some ways, in that a lot of people would lose, but a lot of people would also gain. But I think there would be more loss than there was gain, and it would prevent a lot of people from being able to financially plan. I mean, there's a possibility it would be a very, very serious and sophisticated hack in order to do something like that, in order to disrupt e-commerce and the banking system. But it could happen, especially with the advent of artificial intelligence. And that's one of the big concerns. You see, that's how prescient that movie Terminator was. Because if you really think about it, what a story that has stood the test of time. For something like that to have been written in the 80s, okay? And this thing connected to all the machines, but why was it connected to all the machines? They needed an artificial intelligence because of the threat of hackers, okay? They needed something to control everything and be able to find all the vulnerabilities, find all the bugs, and make sure that the system ran effectively. And of course, this thing became self-aware, and well, we all know how the story goes. But just imagine for a second if a rogue hacking group could somehow utilize machine learning. Of course, we don't have generalized artificial intelligence, but we're getting close to that. And if they were able to leverage something like that, a machine learning algorithm, which was generalized in a sense where it wasn't just infecting, like the Iranian nuclear power plant, just like the Stuxnet virus, which did eventually get out and cause massive disruptions elsewhere in the system. And that was years ago. So just imagine the capability that they have right now. So make no mistake, this is a very serious situation. I believe that the incidents of cyber attacks are up threefold year over year, and we can project that that's going to continue. Now, of course, a lot of that is linked to ransomware, and nation states are denying any involvement and participation in that. And it's understandable why they would, because this is what people need to understand about vulnerabilities in 0 days. Once a 0 day is known about, and a 0 day is, I should probably define what that is. A 0 day is a vulnerability within a system, which is a very powerful vulnerability that would allow somebody to have access to a very sophisticated system and possibly the ability to either bring it down or hold it for ransom or whatever. Now, these 0 days exist, but lots of companies will hire internet security specialists to try to hack their system and to comb it for bugs and to debug it and to basically try to find all these vulnerabilities in the system and patch it up. So say a country like Russia or China had this incredible 0 day that they were storing. Let's say it was for like Facebook or something. Okay, it would allow them access to all of Facebook's data or allow them to just completely shut down the entire system. Okay, it's possible. So if they had that, they would never release it unless they really needed to release it. Because if they release it, then it exposes it and then it will be quickly fixed. Sure, it might cause some damage in the short term, but it would be fixed, it would be remedied, and they would never be able to use it again. So this is why there's emphasis on countries stockpiling 0 days. Because once you use it, whether in a ransom attack or otherwise, you can't use it again. Imagine you're in a boat and there's a hole in the boat. Okay, and the hole is the vulnerability. Once that hole gets patched, okay, water is not going to get through that hole anymore. There has to be another hole that springs up somewhere, and then that one's going to get patched. So this is why all of the best cyber weapons that we don't even know about haven't been used yet. Because if they were used outside the context of anything less than a major war, it would kind of be a waste of time, and it very well may incriminate the country who perpetrated it. And even though there is some plausible deniability, there are signatures which can alert cybersecurity specialists to who exactly has perpetrated the hack. So all I'm saying is don't have all of your eggs in one basket. Make sure you have all of the documentation that you need for the assets that you do have, because if those numbers on a screen just magically go away someday, and I'm not saying that it's going to go away forever, but even if it were to go away for a couple weeks or a month, a lot of people would be up shit's creek. So this is all the more reason to always have a healthy stockpile of food, water, medicine, because you never know when something like this can happen. And the thing is that the likelihood of it happening is only increasing. The more devices you have, like this, and every device, the more we move into this era of what they call smart dust, where everything has a chip or a sensor and is communicating with something else, the more points of entry you have into a system, into the internet, ergo the more points of vulnerability that you potentially have. So the vulnerabilities are only growing exponentially. The doorways or the holes into the boat are only growing exponentially, okay? For example, I had a comment written here, and I'm going to read it to you. Seeing that this has been a plausible long-time threat, one would like to believe there are adequate safety nets in place. Farthest thing from the truth. And notice how they said one would like to believe. Well, you may like to believe that, but there are not adequate safety nets in place, I assure you. This is why the cybersecurity field is booming. I mean, if you want to get into a field where you're going to be guaranteed work for the rest of your existence, go into cybersecurity, because there's always going to be a place for you there. I don't even particularly know a whole lot about the ins and outs of how it works. I just know that the writing's on the wall, and it's pretty simple to understand that if you have more points of entry, you have more software. I mean, we're in the midst of a chip shortage, for Christ's sakes. I mean, they can't even make enough chips to provide for all of the stuff that we need in light of this post-COVID tech boom. So anyways, guys, please go and check out that video, because like most of our very, very high production works that we put out on this channel, the algorithm really seems to, I don't want to say suppress, but I really don't know what it is at this point in time. It just seems like the best content that we're putting out, the stuff that would really allow us to break out to a larger audience, is simply not being suggested. Whereas if I do a half-ass rant where I phone something in, all of a sudden that's being pumped up, left and right. And of course, that stuff is not as appealing to a broader audience. But I'm pretty sure that last video we made, anybody could sit through at least the first 5 minutes of it and get something of value. So anyways, please go and show your support. Share that video, because it is a very, very important video. The thing is that now we're probably not going to hear about it so much once it becomes popular. There's probably going to be this push by the media to cover it up because they don't want to incite panic. And that's another thing we need to be concerned about, is what are they going to tell us? Okay, how much of the upcoming shortages are going to be the result of this cyber volley that we're seeing here? So anyways, we'll leave that for another day. The strong survive, the prepared thrive. Stay tuned, because we ain't slowing down. We're only speeding up on this channel, and I look forward to bringing you some of the best content that we've ever done in the summer of 2021, because the time is of the essence. Now is the time to prepare more than ever before. Every single day that goes by, the reasons to prepare only grow, they don't diminish. So stay safe, guys, but at the same time, enjoy yourself. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, your one-stop shop for premium, high-quality, brand-name products that have been tried and tested by myself and other YouTube gear reviewers. My subscribers save 10% off by using the coupon code SURVIVALPREPPER. All one word in all caps.